Russian drones. NATO's borders are under pressure. Allies argue, Moscow denies. But the airspace violations keep piling up. NATO faces its toughest test: act hard or risk looking weak.
Warplanes breach borders, warnings go up in smoke. NATO debates scrambles jets, bolsters eastern flank, Russia is probing and prodding. Tensions hit boiling point. Inaction is not an option, but whose finger will be on the trigger? It started with a low buzz, drones sighted near Danish airports, then the roar. Fighter jets tearing into Estonian airspace, drones shot down over Poland. Air raid sirens and NATO rushing advanced fighter jets to protect its eastern line. Russia denies everything, calling the alliance's uproar as Western hysteria and warning of dangerous escalation. But on the ground, the danger is deadly real. Airports closed, runways clear, radar screens pulsing red as pilots scramble and air defenses snap to life. Denmark says the threat is real.
There must be no doubt that everything indicates that it is a professional actor when it comes to such a systematic operation at so many locations almost simultaneously. This is what I would define as a hybrid attack with different types of drones. These are actions that could endanger our security and freedom.
Inside NATO, the debate is a storm. Poland, the Baltics are hawkish, demanding downed planes, live fire and instant retribution for every breach. US President Donald Trump is saying, shoot down any intruding Russian jet or drone. But many European capitals warn of a catastrophe. One wrong missile, one accidental clash, and Europe tumbles into chaos. The fingers are pointed towards Moscow.
The suspicion is obvious. This is part of Vladimir Putin's strategy, without us being able to say anything concrete in this case, as I said. But it is part of what we experience every day. We are not at war, but we are also no longer at complete peace.
Excuse me, Mr. President. What does taking it up a notch mean?
It means that if someone provokes you again, you should respond a bit more firmly. So, I won't engage in political fiction.
The alliance is in a deep bind. The window for consensus is closing fast. Europe holds its breath. The next drone strike could be the one that forces NATO's hand, plunging the continent into the abyss. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Okay, as this escalation continues and Russia denies these allegations, NATO is somewhat in a dilemma situation. If it underreacts on the one hand, it normalizes Russian aggression. If it overreacts, then it risks provocation. So where to go from here? Also, all of this comes at a time when President Trump seems to have shifted his policy towards Ukraine and Russia, and that conflict now being full-fledged behind Ukraine, also even answering the reporters' questions on the sidelines of the UNGA here, saying that if there is Russian aggression, if Russia does indeed violate any NATO country airspace, then those countries should shoot these planes down. You may remember that a few years ago, Turkey, also a NATO member, shot down a Russia intruding jet and a drone that violated its airspace, although Turkey has different relationships with Russia compared to other NATO countries. But that was an interesting development, and it didn't happen again after that. All right, well, to get more on this, we are now being joined by Dr. Paul Dorfman, who is a chair at Irish Government Radiation Protection Advisory Committee. Thank you so much for joining us on WION. Are we edging towards more dangerous escalation as we speak right now, notably in Europe?
Well, I mean, Zelensky has just said that it's the most destructive arms race in history, and that the combination of drone tech and AI is catastrophic. He also says that stopping Putin now is cheaper than wondering who will be forced to create a simple drone with a nuclear warhead. And he also says that Putin is intent on driving the war forward wider and deeper. Now, Trump is at the moment demanding that the EU stop all energy purchase from Russia. Meanwhile, Berlin is sending about 172 billion euros of frozen Russian assets to fund Ukraine. So NATO basically has this dilemma, whether it is their policy, our policy, to shoot down Russian jets and drones that violate NATO airspace or not. Now, the UK, Poland, Czechoslovakia, the Nordic states, especially those on the eastern flank of Russia, and now the US, say that violations should face consequences for reckless actions. Germany, on the other hand, cautions restraint. But it has to be said that Germany has, in the last few decades, perhaps because of its history, has maybe erred on the wrong side of international military relations, if one really if it really comes down to it. So NATO have come up with a sort of a compromise solution NATO and allies will employ, in accordance with international law, all necessary military and non-military tools to defend ourselves and deter all threats from all directions. So it's an evolving situation.
And you advise governments on radiation and nuclear safety. If tensions keep rising, how real is the risk of miscalculation spilling into nuclear-linked infrastructures or facilities ultimately?
Well, nuclear infrastructure, nuclear facilities are by definition very vulnerable to attack. I mean, we've seen Zaporizhzhia, by the grace of God, as the US ambassador once said, not gone up in smoke. But that also, two can play at that game. That also involves Russian nuclear hardware, whether that's military or civil. So, I mean, if one considers the nuclear issues, there's two issues here. One issue is civil vulnerability, and there's no question but that all civil nuclear infrastructure is vulnerable to attack. That's absolutely clear, with potentially catastrophic consequences. Then there's the question of nuclear military. And it has to be said that at the moment, both the UK and France have nuclear military capacity. If one puts the US aside, the UK and France has significant military capacity, unlike Ukraine.
Dr. Dorfman, thank you so much for joining us on WION. I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Thank you.